Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining the webinar. We'll get started just in 2.5 minutes. While we're waiting for the top of the hour, I wanted to invite everyone to attend Resi San Diego 2026, June 22nd in person, followed by 2 virtual days that week and 2 virtual days the next week. It takes place alongside the Bio Convention, and it's definitely the best place to meet and partner with early stage investors. There'll be over 300 early stage investors there who specialize in providing seed to Series B financing, as well as a ton of external innovation scouts from large pharma who are looking for the latest and greatest in early stage innovation and early stage companies. So Resi San Diego is definitely the place to be. There's no conflict with bio because Resi partnering starts early in the morning on Monday, and bio partnering doesn't start until much later. So there is absolutely no conflict with bio. The best thing you can do to maximize your ROI for being in San Diego, taking your time and resources to fund yourself there for the whole week, is to knock out 10, 20 additional meetings with well-aligned investors. So please do take advantage of this opportunity, especially if you're planning to be uh, at convention anyway. So thank you for joining the From Pitch Deck to De-Risk Deck webinar. We will start in just a minute to give everyone a chance to join. This webinar is about telling your story in the language of risk and making your company legible. That means understandable in the terms that investors want to hear to capital and licensing partners. So we'll get started in just 30 seconds. Thank you everyone for joining. While we're waiting 30 more seconds for everyone to join, I wanted to invite the audience to come partner with 300 or actually more investors at Resi San Diego alongside the International Convention. It is the place to meet early stage investors who are providing seed to Series B financing that's 250K to 50 million. And you will find no better, larger, and more willing to meet conglomeration of early stage investors during convention week in San Diego than at Resi. So if that's your goal, then Resi is the place to be, and it has absolutely no conflict with bio because partnering starts early in the morning on Monday and bio partnering starts much later. So you can actually do both without any conflict and maximize the ROI for all the time and investment you're taking to make that big trip to San Diego. So kick it off by securing some funding for your company before having those conversations with potential licensing partners. So thank you everyone for joining. We'll get started. Welcome to the From Pitch Deck to De-Risk Deck webinar. I'm joined by the CEO of Life Science Nation, Dennis Ford, who has helped countless companies, probably I would guess over 1,000, if not more, to fundraise and get important treatments to patients. So thank you, Dennis, for being here. My name is Shigato Das. I'm the president and COO of Life Science Nation, and Dennis will get into a more detailed intro of himself shortly. You can see a very convenient QR code on the right of your screen. Feel free to take a picture of that and follow it to register for Resi San Diego. Excuse me. One exclusive thing that we are offering to people who are attending this webinar is a giant discount. So you can use this code, ResiSD500, for a whopping 500 off our 5-day Resi San Diego, which includes the in-person day followed by 4 virtual days, or the San Diego Boston bundle. So $500 off makes it the ROI even more attractive. Or you can take $200 off using Resi SD 200 to attend Resi San Diego for virtual partnering only or as audience access, which means you are free to attend and meet the hundreds of investors there, but you will not have access to the partnering system. So please take advantage of these codes. And again, you see a QR code that should make it super easy for you. And we'll distribute these codes after the webinar as well. So if you forgot to take them down, Don't worry, we'll get them to you. I want to also give a quick overview of what else Life Science Nation does besides offering the Resi conference that we're best known for. First of all, we offer the Life Science Nation Investor Database. So this is meant to supercharge your global partnering campaign. It is a very detailed database containing over 4,000 or 5,000 detailed profiles of investors that are actually put together based on interviews with investors. We're not just web scraping here. We're actually talking to investors, getting the inside baseball on what they're looking for, putting together very detailed profiles, fielding it very granularly. So you can search on your particular indication or modality, or geographic preference, or the amount you're looking to raise, and in minutes, find the number of well-aligned investors that would have taken you years to find before, and includes full contact information. So it allows you to easily reach out to those investors and jumpstart your fundraising journey. We also offer extensive education on entrepreneurial success, how to be an entrepreneur as a life science company, making the transition from science to being a CEO. And Dennis will talk about that extensively today. So you're in for a real treat. These are some of the many, many investors that attend our conferences, our Resi conferences. They are from across 10 different investor types. So no matter what you're looking for, what kind of arrangement, what kind of funding, whatever stage that you're in, you will find many investors who are suitable for you and willing to partner with you and have great conversations with you at Resi. And one of the great opportunities as Resi is the ability to pitch. So the Investor Pitch Challenge lets you pitch to a panel of well-aligned investors who are there specifically to hear about opportunities in your modality, plus the audience that's in the room. So you're guaranteed a panel of investors who are obligated to share their feedback and interact with you. So it's a really great opportunity. And by winning the Investor Pitch Challenge, you get a lot of great complimentary opportunities to attend future Resis, free of charge. So take advantage of that great opportunity to really accelerate your fundraising journey. And lastly, before we get started, I wanted to introduce our investability report, which you can access, and we'll distribute this link after the webinar. Just go to go.lifesciencenation.com/LSN Labs CAR. And what this is an AI-powered report that looks at your pitch deck, has you answer a few questions, and gives you an incredible assessment of your company, how investable it is, the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. It only takes 5 minutes, and it will give you invaluable insights on how to make your deck better and how to make yourself more legible to investors, which we'll hear about more today. And finally, please feel free to reach out to me at s.dos@lifesciencenation.com, because I'll be glad to give you a few well-aligned investors that were probably not on your radar. So after hearing a little bit about your company, I'll find a few well-aligned investors leveraging our investor database that you just heard about, and send you their profiles along with contact information. So please reach out and take advantage of that opportunity. So with that, Dennis, I'll give you an opportunity to introduce yourself, and then I'll get the next deck shared.
Oh, thank you very much. I'm Dennis Ford, and I am the guy that started this company. I guess it was back in 2012, so it's been quite a long ride. And when I started the company, Life Science Nation, I was actively for 5 years. I was CEO of a company that helped raise money for hedge funds, private equity, venture capital, and real estate funds. And so I wound up traveling from New York to London to Hong Kong, pretty much nonstop, selling this investor data. And I realized that the database that I had been curating and created could really work well for scientist entrepreneurs. So after 5 years of being in the alternative investment arena, I said, I would really love to get my database straight turn it into 10 categories of investors, and really help the scientists that are developing what I call the 4Ds: drugs, devices, diagnostics, and digital health. And so when I transferred in and I started dealing with scientist entrepreneurs, I realized that one of the problems they have is they just really don't understand how to go after investors and what the different categories are and what the profiles are. And so there are 10 categories of investors, and it starts with angels and family offices and goes to endowments and patient groups and foundations, and then it's, early stage, mid stage, late stage VC. Same with private equity, and then it goes to med tech and corporate and the large pharma. And there's 10 categories. And so most of the people that I met, they were kind of like, I'm looking for a program. I'm trying to get my SBIR done. I'm just trying to figure it out. And they really kind of thought you find a VC, you hang out with them for a while, you get into a program, and then if you get some data, you can move your company through IND in phase one and eventually, hook up with a farmer, and kind of that's how it works. And now like 15 years has transpired, and gee, it really hasn't changed that much. And I find myself still rolling the rock up the hill, and then it falls down the other side, and I'm rolling it back up again. But I think the good news is we are making, some decent progress. But what I first came into the marketplace, obviously I'm not a PhD, I'm a sales guy, peddler, entrepreneur, um, business development, marketing person. And one of the things that I realized was that the companies that I was dealing with, seed up to 2 million, series A up to 10 million, and series B up to 50 million, they had a really big problem in that they really didn't know how to go out into the internet or the web or partners and figure out who the hell is my target audience? Who do I go after? How do I get a global target list? And what was actually even worse than that was I would watch the cycles go through the SBIR grants and all of the divisions of the regional economic development agencies and the tech hubs and the accelerators and incubators. And so they would get a group would join a cohort, and that cohort would like come together, and everybody would have their kickoff meeting, take selfies. They'd be introduced to their mentors, uh, coaches, entrepreneur in residence, and then they would have this program last anywhere from 6 weeks to 6 months to a year, where talking heads will tell you how do you form a team and how do you do your IP legally, and what's regulatory all about. And they would put this really good talking head presentation together, 15, 20, 30 classes. But I was really amazed when I realized that these classes are completely out of sequence. Like trying to get somebody to do a pro forma when they're preclinical with a small molecule for a hard tumor in breast cancer, and like asking them, like, do your pro forma for the next 3 to 5 years and get your business plan, and let's talk about reimbursement. And it was like, just, it doesn't make sense to me. Uh, the people who are designing the programs for the companies basically are scientists themselves, and they're trying to figure out how do we get our colleagues, our fellow scientists, from the science silo in academia with their tech transfer license, and now get them out into the marketplace. And everybody kind of came up with the same idea. Well, let's just give them knowledge. Let's educate them about what business is like, and what regulatory and reimbursement is like, and what they have to do to go uh, through this process. And I was always stunned because they came out of the program with the final pitch, where a lot of times they would ask me to sit in on a pitch day, and I would get these scientists who were going, I've got this great science and this great market, and here I am, and this is what we're doing. And I'm on the other side of the desk with my fellow investors, and I'm going like, I'm not really interested in your science or your market. I'm interested in where are you at with your milestones? What have you de-risked? What's in the future? And I always would say, so tell me, like, when did you start? How many milestones have you achieved? What was the things that you got done in your first couple of milestones? How much money was spent or how much non-diluted funds were given to you? And now what's in front of you? What's your milestone now that's going to de-risk your current asset, your company? And then what's it look like year two and year three? And every year there's 3 to 5 major milestones, and each one of those milestones has a price tag on it. And if you do, first year, what's in front of me now and where I'm trying to get to, and then second year and third year, you add all those up. That's what we call your ask. And I was just kind of always amazed that when you ask people, so how much you're raising, they really didn't really know or thought they couldn't ask for too much, but there was really no system in place. So I think with that little that little introduction, we can go to our first slide.
So thanks for that great introduction, Dennis. I think a lot of people can absolutely identify with what you're sharing, or if they can't now, they will in the future. So
For
let's
sure.
let's just jump right into it. From
Yeah.
pitch deck to de-risk deck, go.
Yeah, and so what I was just kind of wrapping up with, I would be sitting at these pitch days listening to companies talk about how great their science and how big their market is, but I wasn't hearing them tell me how they de-risk the product and what the milestones in front of them are and how is that going to de-risk the product. And so I was always a little bit going, don't they understand that an investor is not looking at their science and their market. They're looking at like how risky is this team? How risky is the founder? What risk have they put to bed and what risks are still in front of them? And me, as somebody that's on the investor side looking to help these people, I'm over there. Would you please tell me what you've de-risked and what's left on the table and how much is it going to cost me? And so what I realized was that the entire marketplace, whether you're talking about Brazil or Singapore or Paris or London or Japan, all of the people are very well meaningful scientists teaching other scientists about business. And what they do is they decide, well, let's just educate them. And then they don't really have a sequence of the modules being relevant. And so it was really quite interesting. Let's go to the next slide. So what I realized, and we were just talking about, on one side of the table, the scientist is going, oh, we're inhibiting pathways, we're editing mutated genes, we're precision targeting for the first time, going inside and outside and all around, and mRNA encoded therapeutics and reprogramming cells, it's the new thing. And they go, the marketplace, all the boomers, we're going to go after them, or all the diabetics, we're going after them. And it was always the same thing. And on the other side of the table, there's an investor going, is this product real? What's the urgent need? Um, can it be made to work safely? Does it have value to justify the cost of developing it? Is there a credible path to approval through regulatory? Can this founder, can this team, can they deliver? And what's the capital they need to de-risk this asset and get across the chasm? And then if they do get there, is anybody going to make any money on this thing? How are we going to get our multiple? And so I was just really shocked that for the last 15 years that nothing's changed. It's the scientists are talking science and market, and the investors are talking risk, and they meet on the same table for year in, year out. And it's always the same conversation, and it's not correct. So a while ago, we said we've got to teach the scientist entrepreneur, how do we get a list? How do we get a CRM? How do we get a global target list? And let's get them reach. And then recently we've realized we can do that. We can set up an infrastructure. We can get them 800 to 1,000 investor targets globally. We can show them how to make a phone call and how to do an email and how to go to partnering events. But boy, we need to teach them how to talk to an investor in the language that the investor talks in, which is risk. Next slide, please.
Yeah, Dennis, I think considering how hard it is to get those investor meetings, you want to make sure that when you're at the meeting, you want to say the right thing. You want to say something that's understood.
Yeah, and I have this saying, I'm old school. I'm old and old school, and I'm an old sales guy. And so I'm saying, everything is about fit. Go talk to somebody that you have commonality with, and that's called a fit. So if you're a therapeutic and you're talking to a medical device investor, that's not a fit. If you're a digital health company and you're talking with a medical device person, that's not a fit. So the first thing you got to do is get the fit. And then after you get the fit, you've got to get the list, and then you got to figure out how to deal with the list. So you got to put them in a CRM, and then you got to go canvas and go and get in front of them at partnering events and road shows. And then when you're talking to them, you have to be really cognizant of this whole term we're calling legibility. Can the company read who you are? Can you give them information about who you are, what you've done, where you're at that shows them as a fundraising CEO, as the scientist entrepreneur that's in charge of this thing, as part of the executive team? We really know what we're doing, and we understand the language that you're speaking, Mr. Investor. And so one of the things that's interesting at NIH, they adopted this program, one of Steve Blank's program. I forget what they call it, but part of the program is when you're in it, you have to go out and talk with 100 customers about who would be in your market. You need to leave your lab, leave your building, and start going out and meeting people who could potentially buy your product. And that's like really an amazing thing to do because it super helps what you're trying to identify. And the first major risk is there a market? Do you know who the market is? Do you know what it looks like? Have you talked to people in that market? And what have they told you about your idea and your technology and this new product? And going out and doing that exercise is super important, and everyone has to do that exercise. So what we would be then saying, if you're a startup company going, yeah, here's my product and here's what I'm doing. And you know what? When I was getting my SBIR grant back in the day, several years ago, was in part of this program where I had to go out and canvass the marketplace, and I met a whole bunch of pharma folks and got good relationships with them, and I even got some projects out of one or two of them, and now these projects have really helped me move my product along. Well, if that's part of your story and you've already dealt with that market risk, or you've got other reasons to say, we've done some clinical models, we've done some animal models, we've done some testing that has showed us that we're going in the right direction. These are the things that we call legibility. And we'll talk a little bit about that, but legibility makes risk visible. And so if you're talking about market risk and you say, hey, we've already been out there, we've canvassed, we've talked, we've met hundreds of people who 5 years from now could buy the product and they really helped us. We got a few projects. That's something that really carries a lot of weight because it shows, one of the things that you're trying to do to get funded is mitigate market risk. And so when legibility is missing, there's an impressive science, but an unclear investment case. There's too many indications. We can talk a little bit about. I've got a platform, but there's only three of us in the company. We always say it's good to have a pipeline, but you've got to take the lead indication in your pipeline, and you've got to go figure out how to get some mojo around that. And that can be discussions or projects or whatever with pharma folks. And so we're trying to just give you some of the ideas of like how do you make your company legible and how do you start talking in the language of risk. Next slide, please. So everybody's aware of how the conversations go when you go to a meeting and everybody says, "Oh, that's great stuff. Keep me posted." That's not a good reply. They're not referring you to somebody. They're not asking you to sign an NDA. They're not asking you for your data, to get access to your data. Um, and then you go back to the board and you tell them what they're doing, and the board's going, "You're not thinking big enough. You got to make this thing a gigantic platform. You got to go big, big." And in the market, you go back and you start talking to investors and licensing partners, and they're going, "Would you please focus? Would you get something done? Would you put a box around this, get data around it, show us that you've got something?" So there's this stagnation in the industry that, we're talking the wrong language, we're educating people about business, but we're not teaching them really what their partners, their early stage partners, invest 10 categories of investors and licensing partners. How do you really start to speak their language? So we can go on to the next slide now. I always have this saying, when you stop hitting yourself in the head with the hammer, your head will stop hurting. And the reason I say that is because we run into this situation day in and day out where we're looking at companies where they're in pause mode. They've got some, they're ready to do IND, but they can't get the money to fund it. They're in this like nonstop cycle. They go, "If you had the data, I would invest in you." And it's like, if you gave me the money, I could get the data and I could give you what you want. And it's just this nonstop cycle. And companies wind up being in pause. They can't get out into the marketplace. And so 1 out of 10 make it. And it's been that way for a long time. So the question is, in my mind, as I look about the marketplace, I'm saying, can we fix this? Does it have to be 1 out of 10? Can we get 2 out of 10 or 3 out of 10 or three or more out of 10? And I actually believe we can, but I believe that we have to change the conversation. We have to change the education, and we have to start teaching entrepreneurs that are in this room today. How do you stop speaking science and market and start talking in risk? So that when you go to a meeting, they're checking off the boxes and they're saying, "This is a cool company that knows what they're doing." Next slide, please.
Dennis, I think that that really resonates because we see this all the time where there's a company, they're raising seed or Series A, and they've been doing that fundraise for 3, 4, 5, 6 years.
Yeah,
Um,
it's rough.
and they don't understand that it's a communication problem. It's not that their asset or their platform is somehow bad.
Yeah, I mean, it's never the science. It's the way that we've decided to instill knowledge. Scientists trying to teach scientists about how to go about business. um, it makes sense, but it doesn't work, and we've proved that it's not working. And so now we're saying, we want to change it, and we really believe we can. But first, we have to start educating the masses on how do you start speaking the same language as the investors and the licensing partners. And then when we're talking about knowledge, how do you sequence the knowledge when somebody doesn't have IND yet, trying to get them to do a pro forma and a 3, 5, and 10 year revenue plan? It's just not correct. And then how do you make yourself visible, to the right capital? And when you are visible, you're legible, and they're able to read where you are at, and it's making sense. And so, LSN, we have our entrepreneurial education, and we have our Resi conferences that happen 5 times a year, and we have 4,000 investors in our database, and 2,000 of them regularly come to our conferences. And the reason is that you on one side of the table, the sell side, the startup companies, you have to go find 800 to 1,000 investors that are a fit for you in order to carry out a campaign that's going to be 9 to 18 months long. And the investor on the other side of the table, the buy side, they've got to go through 1,000 companies to do half a dozen investments or less. And so both companies were forced to play a numbers game. And we early on saw that you can't go to one partnering event and just call it a day and just hope the phone rings. You've got to be going to as many partnering events as you can. You've got to get out of your office. If you're going to bio, you got to stop by Resi. If you're going to Resi, you got to stop by bio. It's just playing this numbers game. And so we, Life Science Nation, we created an ecosystem. We have the Resi conferences, we have the database, we have a bunch of products and services, and we have metrics that prove that it works. So that's part of the idea of like how we believe that we're going to fix it. Next slide, please.
Dennis, quick question. You mentioned that you got to start with 800 or more investors for the entrepreneur. Why is that?
Because if you go through the motion, and if you say like, if we took a poll of everybody in this room, and I would really love to, but how many investor targets do you currently all have on your list? Everyone's going to say 25, 60, 100, but it's doubtful that people have 800 to 1,000. But if you have like 50 and you're got a good BD marketing salesperson, they could go through 50 accounts in like a week. Uh, and so now what do you do? So you have to get people that are a fit for your stage of development in your product. And then there has to be enough of them so that you can go around going road shows and going to leaving your office in your region and not only going to North America, Europe, and Asia, but that's how it works today in order to play the numbers game. So part of it is um, do you have enough people to go after? And it just degrades so fast. 100 turns into 50, 50 turns into 25, 25 to 12 to 6 to 3, and you're done. And that's like 3 weeks. So now what do you do? So part of, my problem with this whole education sequence, when we educate the cohorts that come through Life Science Nation, and we've been doing it for, several years. We're all about like, let's solve the problem. Let's get the messaging down. Let's get the tagline down. Let's get the elevator pitch down. Let's get the story straight. So we'll talk a little bit about there. But one of the things I want to talk here is when people say, great meeting, keep me posted. If there's any updates, send me your deck. Circle back in a couple of months. A friendly meeting goes nowhere. There's praise, then silence. That's what we call noise. And when you're talking about science and market, and you're not talking in the language of the investor and risk and de-risk, those are the kind of things that happen. But when all of a sudden you say, oh no, we went out and met 100 customers and we got two projects and we got one going with Bayer and one going with Merck, and we're not in their pipeline, but we're doing work together. All of a sudden, check, check, check is what the investor is thinking. And so all of a sudden you get a second meeting, they pull in another colleague, they're requesting access to your data room, they're asking you about what are you thinking about how much you need for IND or your phase 1 studies, and they're booking the next steps. So one thing is noise, polite noise, and the other thing is signal. And so your goal as an early stage company looking for seed, Series A, and Series B, your goal is to get signal. So when you're in front of people, if you start talking the language of risk and it starts resonating with them, all of a sudden you're going to start hearing things. A long time ago, I was told it's not what you say, it's your actions. And so it really is evident when you're in campaign mode, when you're in roadshow mode, when you're in fundraising, partnering mode, you're getting noise and it's not going anywhere. And the noise makes you pause and pause and pause. But when you start to get signal and it's resonating and you're having second meetings and things are moving, that's when you know things are happening. So just educating the group in general about what's your life like right now? Is a lot of noise or is there any signal going on? And being able to just look at where you're at and see how many companies you're talking with and how many meetings you're having a month and how long you've been in this groove for. we can kind of set the pace, kind of figure out where you're at, and then help you build from there. Um, Signal is not what happens during a meeting, it's the actions that happen after it, which is all of a sudden you get a phone call, you get an email, hey, send this deck to this friend of mine. So these are the kind of things that we're trying to help you with. Next slide, please. So what we've been able to figure out is in order to resonate, you've got to personalize and you've got to have your stories. And there's about four stories. There's the founder story, like, why are you here? What was the magic that happened in your life that decided that you were going to be a PhD scientist doing deep research in a scientific silo? Like, what was that? Because everybody wants to know that. And then how did you find your team and how did the team get together? And then, what happened with the technology? What was the thing that happened, the circumstance that all of a sudden told you we might have something here? And then, how the heck did you figure out the patient? Because the patient story is the market. And along with patient story is cost to patient, cost to get into the system, reimbursement, regulatory. And then what's the business mode here? How are we distributing this thing? How's it going to scale? How's it going to grow? And so you, as the founder who's going out and raising money, you've got this problem that you've got four stories that you have to kind of manipulate into one cogent, simple narrative that you can tell somebody either in a few words, like a tagline, or a few sentences, like an elevator pitch, or 30 minutes or 5 minutes for an investor pitch show, or 30 minutes in front of somebody. How can you get that story so that it's simple, it resonates, it's compelling, and it answers the questions? So one of the things that we like to say is we've got these four stories that's a problem that we have to figure out how to get that straight. And that's what we do really well. I'm a writer, I'm an Irish storyteller, so I can listen to all of the technology and go, oh, there's a metaphor for this. We should be using this metaphor. So we've got the four stories, and then we've got this risk stack. I think if the next we go to the next slide, we'll see the risk stack. Uh, what we're saying here is we need to get a story that surfaces the risk that's been mitigated, the risks in front of us, and then how we're going to mitigate the risk going forward. So that's kind of like, I think, a secret ingredient that people go, why would I want to tell an investor all of my problems that I'm currently trying to not think about? And it's like, that's shows them that you know what your problems are, shows them what the next one is. And if it's you pick the right one and they agree, then you get check. This guy knows what he's doing. And if you pick the wrong one, they go, why did you choose that? And so these are some of the things that we're trying to integrate into the story. Next slide, please. So when we talk about execution and financing, the investor is sitting there on one side of the table and they're looking at you and your team member, if there's two or three of you there, and they're going, who are these guys? What makes them tick? Can this person lead a company? Do they really know what they're doing? Uh, can they raise money against milestones? Do they have an idea of what that's all about? How are they going to keep the lights on? So you're talking about, oh, we just figured out how to flip a switch in bone marrow from going from fat to bone, and we're going to go into the longevity arena and we're going to save all of the old people from bone degeneration and look at the market and look at this wonderful technology, and they're going, what's your next milestone that's going to prove that point? How do you know there's a switch that you can turn on and off? What is the data that proves that? So one side, once again, we're going science and market, and the other side is going, really? Tell me more. Show me that you can do this. Show me that your technology worked. Does it work in a mouse model? Where is it now? What's next on the hit parade for getting me data on this? And what's it going to cost? And so when you're leading with this founder story and you're getting this stuff up front on the table, your credibility just goes sky high. Next slide, please. So, and then it's the same for the technical and the regulatory. Uh, the epiphany in plain language with the approval path riding right behind it. So the questions that they want to know is, does it actually work? Is it reliable? Is it beyond the founding team's conviction that they can get this thing up and running? Is it going to be credible? Is it going to work? And so you have to be saying better, faster, cheaper, invasive versus non-invasive, intravenous versus pill. Each plane technical risk and modality you choose, is it the right one? Did you pick the right disease? So all of these things are part of what they're thinking about. And you have to know that part of your telling a story and integrating the technology and the regulatory path and how you're going to get through IND and the clinical models and the animal models, that you really know what they are, you know what order they're in, and you know how much they cost. And then once again, they're just going, check. These guys are impressive. They know who they are, they know where they're going, they've got the right disease, they've got the right data. And that's the kind of impression that you want to leave with the people you're having a dialogue with.
Yeah,
Next
Dennis,
slide, please.
one
Yes,
thing
yes,
that
please.
one thing that I've heard a lot from investors is they saw a science project, and even though the science is exciting, when they consider the cost of goods or actually being able to manufacture this, it's actually prohibitive. So,
Exactly right. Yeah.
to your point, it's not just about the science, it's about the whole process that would be involved in getting it to clinical and getting it to market.
Yeah, and we see that based on who we are in our life for the last 15 years. We're seeing all of the scientists that got funded by SBIR, and some of them are really, super incredible scientists, engineers, doing incredible things. But when you start asking them about, so how does this translate and how long is it going to take? And their eyes glaze over, they only want to tell you about the science. And then there's also the other side of the coin when you get a guy or a girl that's super sophisticated and they've been part of teams before that have taken products out, and you get in front of them and they net everything out for you. They're super confident. They know where they're at. They know what the costs are. They know what they're doing. So on one side, you have super sophisticated people who have been there, done that many times and been very successful. And the other time, you got the wide-eyed scientists that it's their first time trying to commercialize and go across the chasm. And so in everything in between. And so I would think we have probably good experiences here with that. So when we get to the patient story, we're talking about, real person, real urgency, real buyer, not a market size chart. And, the other thing about charts, if you say, oh, we've got this, non-cold chain insulin for diabetes, blah, 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 and you start talking about the diabetes market, if you're going to a person that's an expert in the diabetes market, the last thing you want to do is put 3 or 4 slides together on how bad obesity and how bad the diabetes 1 and 2 is really happening. It's just they know it, you know it. Why waste the time? You want to get in front of them. They know the market. You want to tell them what you've done and how you're going to mitigate the current risk in front of you, draw the straightest line towards getting to Series A and Series B. So market is super important, and the patient story is super important. Uh, but you don't want to be caught not understanding really how are you going to de-risk to get to IND in phase one and phase two, et cetera. Next slide, please. The business story, it's really kind of interesting, but do the economics work inside the system? And is there a believable buyer or licensing partner? So you can go in through the scientific gatekeepers and you can get vetted by them. but eventually you're going to have to come out. We always have a thing that you have to learn how to speak so many languages, the language of the gatekeeper, the language of the evaluator, the language of the BD person, and then the language of the executive that's going to be doing the deal. It's like you've got to like be fluent in all of them, and all of them revolve around what we're talking about today, which is risk. So getting the business story straight and knowing the economics and knowing what an exit is going to look like. Next slide, please. Um, the journey of de-risking, the ask and the road ahead. Every milestone is a risk retired, and what you have spent earns trust if you've picked the right milestones and got rid of them. And I don't know how many people here, do you have a list of all the milestones that you've achieved with your technology since you started it? Could be 5 years ago, 3 years ago, 2 years ago, but every major milestone, you should keep track of it, and then the ones in front of you right now. Um, and what we've said before is, how do you get your ask? And it's you say, here's the milestone in front of me now, and here's another one by the end of the year, and here's four next year, and four the next, and here's the cost. And that's your ask. And so when you know that, and you can pull out a Gantt chart and you can show the layers, here's what we did and how much it cost, and here's where we are now and where we're going, and here's year two and year three, your credibility soars. So really being able to just present yourself like you know where you've been, you know where you are, and you know where you're going. Next slide, please, Shigato. So when we look at it, the two lists really start to line up. You've got execution and finance and technical and regulatory and market and economic and exit risk. So those are the seven risks that are in the minds of the people that you're talking to. And then we've got to figure out how to weave those risks into this narrative that you give. And we're really able to help you if you wish. So, couple of side notes. We did write this AI agent. I actually wrote it, and I created a bunch of rules sets, and then I figured out how to tokenize them. And I figured out that if I can get a PowerPoint presentation and an executive summary, and then as an extra boost, I can get someone to fill out a 20-question survey. If they give me their PowerPoint, their executive summary, and fill out the survey, I can generate a 6-page what I call investability report. And the 6-page report is like really cool. It'll give you an example of a tagline. It'll give you an example of an elevator pitch that we garnered from reading your stuff. It's a robot's view of how they would organize what you put together as your message about your technology, your company, your market. And so we don't charge for that. We've done hundreds of them for people. And all you have to do is just you got Shigato's email address. I'm dford at lifesciencenation.com. Uh, reach out to us, send us your PowerPoint, your executive summary, and in a few seconds, we'll turn around a 6-page report. It can be really helpful for you to see when what you're pitching and then how somebody else digests it and reorganizes it and sends it out to you. So that's something there. Do you have any other things we'd like to discuss here, Shigato?
No, other than to mention that the URL to access that, we're going to send out to the webinar participants afterwards. So to make it super easy for everyone.
And I know we've gone over a lot of stuff here and it's a different language, but if anybody has any questions, feel free to throw one in chat. And we've covered a lot of ground today. We believe that we've got to get everybody speaking the same language, that we've got to get the people that are running the programs to start giving you things that are in sequence as to where you're at in your development chain. And we've got to make you visible to the people that want to talk to you. That whole signal versus noise stuff is kind of hard to get at first. But I think when you start to see it work, when you change your way that you pitch and you're talking the same language as the licensing partner or the uh, investor, and all of a sudden you're starting to get signal. It's really quite a transition, but it's part of the one that you need to get to in order to really be adroit at getting partners. Um, the whole thing is getting second meetings, hearing additional participants get plugged in, data room requests, financing discussions, scheduling next meetings. These things are all really good things, which we call signal. Um, if there's any questions or anybody has any comment, it looks like there's anything in there, my friend Shigato?
So, Dennis, I think one thing that the audience is probably eager to know, especially considering Resi San Diego is coming up, Bio is coming up, is when you're in a partnering meeting at a conference and you only have 25 minutes. What are you've covered a lot of things, but
Yeah, I got it.
generally, as far as the order, how should
Let
you
me just,
approach this
yeah,
25-minute
great
meeting?
question. Great question. And this is going to be super helpful for everybody. Just a couple of things. If you go into a partnering system 2 weeks or a week before and you start sending out messages, you've got to, we have a four-step program where first request, second request, third request, and final request. If you do that, um, if you do that, you'll get, 5 to 7 meetings just by reaching out. But if you do this four-step program, you'll get, 12 to 15 meetings. And nobody believes it, but we prove it all the time because we do it for a living. And it's just that whole thing of getting people who don't feel comfortable bothering people and following up. It's really the key. The other thing that's really interesting about our Resi events is the investors wear a red badge and they are vetted investors. iBanks don't get through, broker dealers don't get through, CROs don't get through. If you've got a red badge on, you're an investor. And so we have this thing where we really train our CEOs. How can you tell who you are in like 8 words? Or a small molecule for hard breast tumors, and this is who we are and what we do. And then we say, go up to anybody with a red badge and go, are you a drug or a device? And if they say, I'm a drug investor, say, well, let me tell you about my small molecule for breast tumor and go right at it. And at our conference, you can have 20 to 30, we call them ad hoc meetings. You just walk up to somebody with a red badge on, stick out your hand and start talking to them. Because we've done 60 of these over 12 years, you go to Bio, there's a security guard with a gun checking your wristband. There's like all sorts of, what level lunch you can do. And at our place, it's completely uh, very interactive, no protocol, and we built it that way 12 years ago. Our investors come and they want you to come up and introduce yourself. They want you to do your elevator pitch. And if they can help you, they'll help you. They'll say, you know what, talk to me, but that's my friend over there. And they'll walk you over and introduce you to the right investor. That happens all the time at our place because we're a different type of environment. We're really interactive. We're not really into following the protocol. Everybody can talk to everybody. And it's been that way 5 times a year. And it really, really works.
So Dennis, drilling down on that a bit, one of the reasons I think people like partnering systems, especially scientists, is because that meeting is set up without you having to approach live. And it's something that if you're not an extrovert or maybe you don't lean towards extroversion, it's an easier approach. Now you're saying that, okay, at this meeting, there are all these investors wearing red badges, and you just walk up to them and introduce yourself.
Yeah.
Um, for
It
people
blows
who are,
everybody's mind.
yeah, for people who are used to using that partnering system and otherwise kind of being a wallflower, um, what's your advice on making that first approach? Do you use some
Yeah.
small talk to break the ice? Like,
No, no. I mean, so So Karen, who's our resident geeky nerdy person, she basically answered the question you just asked, and she said, "I'm a scientist. I'm an analytic. I am shy. I do not want to go talk to people." She goes, "But after being here for, I think she's on her ninth year now," she said, "I just created a persona, Karen at the event, and I just go up and talk to people, and it's a persona I invented because I'm not like that." But she really got it right. So we were just doing a boot camp cohort. We have 8 Japanese companies coming from Tokyo, and the person said, "Any comments?" They go, "I really prefer to schedule the meetings and not really the ad hoc. Can you make that work better?" And I just said, I understand they're from Japan. They might not, the culture's different. They might not just be used to going up and leaning in and barging into a conversation with two guys with red badges and interrupting them. But here's the thing. I kind of look at it like it's you're trying to catch a wave, you're surfing, you've never surfed before, and you're sitting on the beach and you're watching people surf and you're just going, yeah, okay. And then you go, I guess I better pick up my board and get in the water. Then you're sitting in the water with your board and you're kind of watching everybody, but the waves go by. And if you're not going to go out there and start catching them, they're going to go by and you're going to be left standing there. So there's this epiphany, there's this really, you know, uh, incredible transformation that happens when a scientist analytic who is not a people person but has enough desire to get their technology into market to potentially save a life takes a big breath, takes a swallow and go, here I go, I'm jumping into the deep end. And the thing that's amazing, the scientist entrepreneur PhD, when they do that, they are so good because they don't have any of the qualities that drive people crazy. They really care about their product. They really understand how to describe it. They really can interact, and it's like they're experts in it. So getting someone to transition and go over and get into that, it's something you have to do, and you don't have a choice if you want to go raise money. Your choice is go find somebody in your company that can do it and send them to the meeting. But, if you have 15 scheduled meetings and 20 ad hoc meetings, that's 35 meetings. And if you go to 5 Resi events around the world, you can do the math, 150 plus meetings in a year. How many people are having those kind of meetings? Like right now, how many did you have last month? How many did you have this week? How many are you going to have next week? We're playing a numbers game. And so you got to have to decide to belly up to the bar and decide, am I the person who's going to see if I can do this? And if I don't like it, that's great. Go hire somebody or get somebody in your company that does like it. Over to you, Shigato. Good
Yeah, and
questions.
that's a great point about if this is not your your strong point, hire that person, a BD assistant, someone to help you with that outreach because there are people who absolutely like that. We have a question from the audience that's about a specific modality, but I'm going to generalize it a bit. So the question specifically is, as a cell therapy company targeting rare disease, it feels like the conversation ends before we can even get to these points. What's the best way to get to those 800 leads, and what can we lead with to show that we're differentiated and worth listening to? And I think that the main problem here is, there's some modalities that you know how this works. Sometimes advanced therapies was all the rage 5 years ago, and now advanced therapies are like a little considered a little too risky. Rare disease was all the rage, 5, 6 years ago. Now people are looking for things that address heart disease. So these
Yeah,
these kinds
well,
of
yeah,
things
but
change.
yeah, I don't know if I buy all of that. I think if you're doing cell and gene therapy for rare disease, it's super hot. But you've got to find the people that are looking for you. Like Eli Lilly just brought, 150 PhDs into the Boston waterfront 3 or 4 years ago, and it's all concentrating on cell and gene therapy. And so you've got to be able to get into the database. And if you tell us where you're at, we'll send the right BD guy. We'll show you in a database, but you really you're hot but you might not be doing it right, and so you're feeling like you're cold. But I know for a fact, I talk to investors all over the world. I just spent 2 weeks in Asia, in Korea, and Japan. There are so many cell and gene therapy pharma out there, mid-stage, big pharma, that are looking for technology, especially from the U.S., because it's got so much credibility just because it's from the U.S. And they're all over the place. But if you cannot see them, then it's very easy to feel you're by yourself and you can't even get a conversation going, because if you're talking with a guy that's interested in cell and gene therapy and they're looking for phase 3 or growth and you're sitting in preclinical, it's not a fit. So that's one of the things that will kill you all the time. You've got to get a dialogue with the person that's a fit for your stage of development in your product. So whoever asked that question, send us your email, surface to Shigato. We'll put you in front of our BD person. We'll just go do a search. And I guarantee you'll be 600 or 800, and we'll go through them with you. And you can see who you've talked to and who you didn't know and who you know. But I want to cure rare diseases. So allow us to help you.
That's a great point, Dennis, that certain modalities, even if there's some hype about them not being as popular as they once were, that's not necessarily true. It just matters where you look and if you're looking in the right areas.
Yeah, reading the trends and trying to keep up with the trends. No, you need to find all the KOLs and all the pharma. I mean, I know for a fact, I mean, just if going to NIH and getting a rare disease designation, I mean, there's just so many shortcuts and so much stuff that's really happening in the family offices and whatever rare disease you're going after that they're trying to cure, neurofibromatosis or Children's Tumor Foundation, or it's, the Michael J. Fox. There's just so much family office activity in rare disease, but it's really hard to map it if you don't know how. Looks like we have a minute. Thank you all very much for coming, and we really appreciate your participation today.
Yeah, thank you everyone for joining our webinar. Again, my email address is s.das, s.d as in David, a.s as in Sam, at lifesciencenation.com. I'll be glad to do an investor search for you, so please do feel free to reach out. And, as Dennis just said, you want to get those 150 meetings a year throughout the various partnering events. And if you're have signed up for convention and at this point don't have the number of meetings that you are hoping to have, uh, it makes no sense not to register for Resi. So Resi is a place that you're going to get those meetings with investors, and will help you if you don't have the meeting numbers that you want now to leave convention week feeling good about yourself, that you really maximize the opportunity in San Diego.
Yeah, and
So thank you.
we
Go
can
ahead,
get you
Dennis.
we can get you a discount. And the worst case is get an audience access pass if you're not sure, and just get an audience access pass, get in the building, anybody with a red badge, start talking to them. And we'll help you. So we're here to help. I'm D Ford at lifesciencenation.com. Take care, guys.
Okay, thanks everyone.